Okay, so hello everyone and welcome to the Cloud Lunch and Learn sessions. My name is Hugo Barona and today we have Vukasin with us talking about Azure Automation. I hand over to you, Vukasin.
Thanks, Hugo. I hope everyone is doing well. Thanks for joining us today. I really like this idea of spending a lunch break to learn something new. So a little bit about myself. My name is Vukašin Terzić. I live in Prague. I work as a solution architect in a consulting company called KPCS. And I'm currently focusing on Azure-related projects most of the time. And I tend to help customers achieve all sorts of cool things with Azure. I also work with virtualization platform, hyperconverged infrastructures, Active Directory, and other Windows server-based infrastructure bits and bobs. So today's session is about combining two technologies that had the highest impact on my professional life. And those are PowerShell and Azure. I'm going to show you how to use PowerShell with Automation Account. And I'm hoping to show you enough, so after we finish here today, you will immediately start exploring and using it on your own. If you have any questions, write them down and in the chat here, and we will have a space in the end where we can answer. So to understand why the Automation Account is so special, let's take a look first how we typically use PowerShell. So we are using PowerShell on premises, of course, and that can be on a client computer, that can be a Windows, Linux, or a Mac. Now that we have PowerShell Core, we know that it's multi-platform, or it can be on a server. And perhaps that's a management server, that's a server that we are currently configuring directly or remotely, or it's some kind of jump box or something like that. And in both those cases, in clients and servers, we can have all our dependencies installed in one place, like modules or some other command line tools. We can have our favorite editor. Someone of us use ISC, someone wants to use VS Code. We can install that there. And we can write a script and execute the script from the same place. On premises, we also have some less common ways to run PowerShell, like in a browser or like, for example, inside of a network router, but let's not worry about those. And then we have Azure. And in Azure, we have plenty of ways how we can run and execute PowerShell. And first, obviously, there is an Azure VM. And everything here is the same as running it from our on-premises computer. We can install our dependencies and everything stays there. But we still need to authenticate first inside of our script if we want to interact with Azure resources. Using PowerShell in Azure or to interact with Azure in this way is fine, but it's not most time and cost-effective solution, at least from my opinion. And if you're running an entire VM in Azure and paying for it just for the purpose of executing some script on a schedule or something like that, then you are definitely doing something wrong. And there are better ways to do that. Then we have a Cloud Shell. That's easy to get from a browser or from an app on your phone. Everything is already installed inside of all the Azure PowerShell modules are already installed in the PowerShell, in the Azure Cloud Shell. And basically what we got is a PowerShell core shell that is already logged into our Azure subscription. That's great for performing some tasks or pulling out information about resources or quickly create, I don't know, a virtual machine. There is also integrated editor. If you type code in it, you will get a multi-line editor that can help you work with some multi-line code. And that's also great. And I like using Cloud Shell, but this is not a typical place from where you would run all of your scripts or automate something on a schedule. Then we have Azure App Service. And this works only with the PowerShell core. And also it has some other limitations like a time limit and so on. And it generated some extra costs. This is a great place to run your app, you create, but not a place for running your daily operation scripts or performing single line commands. So not for us operation people. And then we can also run PowerShell in Azure DevOps pipeline. And lately I'm using Azure DevOps to execute PowerShell code a lot. And it can be very nice way to automate things. You get some amount of free agent run time each month, so you don't have to pay for it. And it has a built-in logging feature that are great benefit, actually, those logging features. But it's not as convenient as the automation account. And then we have automation accounts. So all of those tools that I just mentioned previously had some limitations, or they were too expensive or too complicated to set up. And automation account is designed specifically to help us automate things and processes. And this quote I'm showing here is from MS Docs page, but basically automation account was made to perform automation tasks, and it fully supports PowerShell. And that's great. So in translation, this means that it's very easy to start working with. You don't typically need too much to introduce too much changes inside of your script, so you can run it in there. In most of the cases, you can just upload your scripts that work on-premises, and with no or very little editing, you can actually execute them in the automation account. And so here are some sets of features that automation account has. And it allows us to create and run graphical and scripted runbooks. And notice the term runbooks. That's how the scripts are called here. It also supports Python. But that's not the only part of the automation account. This is like a tool inside of the Azure that allows us to automate not just by running scripts, but it also has some integrated services, like, for example, collect inventory information. You can activate that, enable log analytics, and it can be really easy to implement, helpful tool to help you with collecting all sorts of information about the Azure environment and also tracking changes. Another great thing that's already integrated is allows you to write, manage, and compile PowerShell desired state configurations for nodes in any cloud or on-premises data center. And it has a built-in pull server, and it works great with Windows and Linux servers. If you ever tried to create, to use PowerShell desired state configuration on premises, you find out that you need to configure some extra things like that pull server, push server, and everything is here for you, ready to use. And since it works with desired state configuration, it also, Microsoft implemented something called Azure Automation, Azure Update Management. And this is a great feature that allows us to connect our Azure servers or on-premises servers that can be a Windows or Linux. And we can assess the updates, approve, and install the new updates on a custom schedule that we can create. It can replace your local Vesus server. And what I like about it is that it's easy to configure in most cases, and works with Linux, which Vesus cannot do. And how it works with Linux? Well, desired state configuration. Right. And now, what's also unique in Azure Automation that it comparing to other PowerShell to other ways of running PowerShell is that it shares things with other Azure services, and it's very easy to integrate. So we can use things such as airbag roles, tags, auditing. Those are all there, integrated, ready for us to use. But it also has so much more than that. We are able to use it as we would typically use PowerShell on premises in combination with all sorts of things that Azure can offer. For example, it's very easy to use it to or to interact with your Azure resources with almost no work for you to do that and prepare that. And you can also use things like, I don't know, passwords from Key Vault, interacting with on-premises servers from Azure directly, and so on. And integration is a big part of it. And I'm going to come back to those inter-service relations in a few moments. And I don't want to show you that here on some kind of PowerPoint chart. I'm going to actually show you that in the portal. And so to get things going, let's take a look how we can create an automation account and start using it with our existing scripts. I think that discussing things in depth will make more sense after you get the feeling of how it works. So it's time for a first demo. Okay, so now I'm in Azure portal. I have a subscription that is nearly empty. And first, I would like to ask if you don't see the screen correctly, or you want me to make something bigger or change the color. Please let us know here in the chat. And also, when I start showing up some scripts, maybe I should make them bigger or change the contrast. Also, let me know. Okay. Just want to see if someone already asked for that. I don't think so.
It looks like it's all good. Yeah, you can go.
All right, perfect. So first thing that we want to do is to create an automation account. Go here, search automation accounts, and click add. There are a couple of things that we need to do. First, we need to create a name, to give it a name. And so it's Azure Automation Account. I don't like that. So AAC, for example, and it's going to be called Cloud Lunch and Learn. Select my subscription. I already have resource group for that. I can select location. And now notice something here. It's offering me to create a run as account. I can say no. And if I don't have proper rights in my subscript or in my Azure Active Directory tenant, this will be grayed out and I will not be able to do that. I'm going to say yes. So it will get created, and then I will explain a little bit more what it is. Click create, and we are now just a few seconds from having our automation account created. So we can see it happened already. It was created, but we can also see that something else is happening here, and there is one more thing going on, and that's the creation of the run as account. So if I refresh it here, it should get okay. Are we all right? So my automation account was created, and if I click on it now, I can see that nothing interesting is here at the moment because we didn't run anything on it. We didn't execute any scripts, so we cannot see any information. One thing that was not present during the creation wizard is adding tags. And I like adding tags to all the resources I create in Azure because it's much easier to find out what they are for later on. And that field was completely missing in the wizard. So if you are creating automation account with PowerShell, you can do that directly. But if you create it like this, then you can come here and you can create a tag. So I'm going to say created by Vuki, and let's not get any. This is a trial subscription, so we don't have to do that. And then we can also configure access control. So we can add airbag roles to here to allow people to access and use our automation account. And then we noticed here that there was automation account. So before we start looking at this, there was Azure Active Directory run as account created. Before we go and dig into the automation account itself, let's take a look at that run as account. So if I go here, I can see that there is run as account. It will expire in 1 year. And I can see that this is its display name. There is also a certificate created with this thumbprint here. It expires the same time as the automation account, run as account. And this is the certificate that will allow me to interact with other services in Azure, or more, not services, but resources. Then we have a connection, and we can see that there is run as connection and there is an application ID. This means that there is now Active Directory application created for us, and it will run with this service principal. And another thing that is very important to notice here is that this service principal got the contributor role in our entire subscription. Thing that it's less important is that it also created some tutorial runbooks that we don't need now. So let's take a look at the Azure Active Directory and see what was actually created. So if I go to applications, oh sorry, not here. Active Directory, it's in the registrations, yeah. So, and it's this one. I can see that there is actually app registered, and I can see all the information about it. And if we go to the Active Directory itself, no, I actually want to go to subscription. And if I look at the subscription and the access control of the subscription, you can see that there is this weird thing that now has full access or contributor access to the entire subscription. And this is probably not how you should leave it in your subscription in production. There are a few ways how this can be configured. If your scripts need to run with a contributor access to entire subscription, then you can leave it like this. And then you can limit access to automation account itself, as we showed earlier. Or you can remove this from here and give it access, like contributor access, for example, to, I don't know, resource group, let's say. And this will, and maybe I didn't mention that completely, but basically this run as account is account under which your scripts will run. And whatever access level you give it to, all your scripts will be able to do that. And now we are talking about interaction with Azure resources, not with the resources that are, for example, inside of the virtual machine or somewhere on your own premises, just with the things that you can configure basically from Azure portal or by using Azure PowerShell commandlet, to be more precise. And as I said, there are a few ways how you can configure this. Another way would be also not to create a run as account at all, and then give some kind of access to individual scripts. And those scripts will have to authenticate every time, not by using automation account, but by using standard PowerShell commandlets to log into your Azure subscription and interact with the resources. This way gives you a little bit more flexibility to configure everything exactly as you need without compromising security. But in the end, it's up to you to find a balance between easy and secure. I usually remove contributor and start with something with some more limited setup than giving it contributor to entire subscription. For us, that's now something that we don't need to worry about, and having the contributor access to full subscription, it's easy to start working with. So if I go back to automation account again, like this, automation accounts, I have my automation account here. Now, if you go down, you can see that those things that I mentioned about inventory, change tracking, desired state configuration, and update management can be configured from here directly. And the configuration mostly can be done, of those services can be done like right here from portal. What we are interested in today are not update managements and so on. We want to talk about running PowerShell. And as I mentioned earlier, we need to use runbooks. So runbooks, we already have some runbooks here, and those are for us to see how it works, we want to create a PowerShell runbook on our own. And to do that, I'm going to say create a runbook. And I can obviously create a runbook and then type the code, but maybe let's start importing. So I'm actually going to upload some file that I have on my desktop, maybe something like this. And this is a simple script that it's going to, and you can see that it automatically gave it a name, and it detected the type. And now I can add description. And just to finish my previous sentence, this is a script, simple script that is actually converting some text to like ASCII code. So it's going to be a hello world looking a little bit better. And now I'm going to create a runbook. And this is all it takes, right? It created now a runbook from the code I already used. And you can see that it's calling some function here. And in the end, we are going to call that function and with the text hello world, right? So let's see if we can test if that works. There is something now called test panel. And notice that this script is, or actually you cannot notice it from this page, but if I go back completely here to Runbooks, you can see that it's new and it's not published. So when you create or edit existing runbooks or create new runbook, it goes into this stage when it's not published yet. And that allows you to test it. You can even, if you are editing existing one, while it's in unpublished stage, you can still have your published version and work with it and test it and make sure everything works before actually publishing the change. And so now I don't have option to run it from my production workloads, to run it on a schedule or something like that, because it's not published yet. But I can interact with it and I can run it in a test mode. You see, I cannot execute it like this, but I can still execute it in the test pane. And now I'm coming back a little bit to those dependencies. So what happens now? If I click start, it's going to execute the script. First it's going to queue, and then it's going to execute. And what's actually happening now in the background is that the Azure Automation Account is taking all those different dependencies and combining them with my runbook and spinning up the virtual machine on which this is actually executed on the background, right? And so we can see that my script worked. It wrote very nice hello world. In the real world, you having a script that is using like the right host on the screen inside of the Azure Automation Account is useless. Of course, you want to use it for something actionable, something that actually is doing something. But for our demo, we are stuck with the hello world. Now, we know it works, so let's go back and let's publish our script. Right. Again, I have to click edit, and now we know it works, and I want to publish it. And now if I click run again, it's the page we saw is not going to be in a test pane, but this is already like a production thing, and it looks a little bit different. And also it gives us a little bit more options. So now it creates a job, and the job as it's such, it also can be added to the queue. But we can see a little bit more information, and I'm going to come back to those. What's important for us now is that we don't have any input parameters, and we are actually just waiting for the output. Okay, so now it's running, and we can see it completed. Perfect. So other than the output, that's probably not something that we will be interested in if we are not troubleshooting or if we don't have hello world script like this. We have like we will not be interested in output so much because we want this to run somewhere on the background to happen all automatically by itself without actually adding any outputs like this, but maybe producing some files like log files that we can decide where to save. We don't have a storage here where we can save all the logs, but we can save the logs, for example, in an Azure storage account or on premises or inside of the virtual machine or something like that. So it's very easy to connect to those services and save those files that were produced. But we are interested in this in case we want to go back and see what happened. So we can come here and look at the errors, warnings, logs that were produced from the output, or not from the output, but from the script run itself. And we can see which runbook was it. And what's also very important, that we can see the snapshot. And this is a version of it that was actually executed during this job. And this is great because you can, like later on, start making changes, publishing those changes, and so on. And you will like make the changes. And then you go back and you see that like 6 months ago, or not 6 months ago, but let's say a week ago, your job happened differently. And you want to see what was the version of the script that produced the result. So here it is. There is a screenshot. There is a snapshot of that script. And since I was showing that page, just to show you how to get there, is basically you go here back to your automation account, and you go to jobs, and you can find that job that was executed with the time of it, and then you get to all that information that I just showed you. This is really useful, and I like this, and this is like common thing for multiple Azure services, and you don't have this on premises. Maybe you do have some like Git history or something like that, but like logging of this level, it's not there on premises. You have to create it on your own, which is a lot of extra effort for you to like include that in your script. In here, it's there. It's for you. It's free. I really like that. And that's, for me, it's like great benefit. Similar things like are documented, maybe even more, if you use PowerShell inside of the Azure DevOps. Right, so let's go back to our automation account and see what else we can do. Right, so we created our first runbook, and okay, that's fine. It does what it needs to do. What I would like to do is to be able to change this text, which means that I would like to be able to pass some parameters to the script, so I don't have to create a different script for every like VM that I want to create, right? So you have a script that is used to create virtual machines, but you are never going to create the same virtual machine again. So it's better if you write a script in a way that you can have like the code that is common for all the use cases, like creating virtual machine, but you want to pass all those parameters to the script every time you run it, so it can be different. So that's easy because it's already there and integrated. If I go edit in my script and I add parameter exactly as we are used to in PowerShell, oops, and I want to say text, yeah, okay, so it needs to be like this. Okay, so that's our parameter, text to convert. Maybe that's a little bit more describing. And now, of course, I want to execute here with that parameter. And that's it. We are now done. If I didn't make a mistake, it should be okay. And now you can see that I can test it again because I make a change. I can revert it to the version that was previously published, or I can publish it. I'm going to publish it just to make things easier. And now when I run it, it's going to ask me, what is the text? Okay, so that's the text. I run it. It's going to pass the text to the script, and we are going to see the output. very easy, very useful. And now, of course, here in input, we can see the, and it's already completed. We can see what's the value, right? Great. So that was the easiest that can get. And those parameters, again, maybe it looks to you like that you need to pass those parameters manually, but actually no. Yes and no. If you execute it like this and manually, then yes, you have to pass it every time. But good thing about Azure Automation Account is that really it can be integrated with so many other services. And maybe I'm jumping here a little bit here, but you will see that when we start using the scripts with the different services, that using those parameters and passing those parameters to the script is very, very valuable things to have. Okay, so now we run a script a few times, or Runbook. We executed a Runbook a few times. So now let's take a look what happens here. Now we can see some statistics. We can still see that, like, okay, so this is basic numbers. Who is interested in that? We can see the jobs that were completed. Perfect. And now those are the basic things that I wanted to cover. Now, before you start creating your scripts, you can actually play and edit those scripts that exist here. Something that I'm trying to avoid, but I don't want to avoid completely, is that there is a way to create a graphical runbook that is PowerShell based. And I think we are all like PowerShell people here. So I don't have to tell you that this is not a way to do. But actually, if you are not a PowerShell person and you want to do something with like a no-code way, then again, you shouldn't be using this. If you want to do it without code, then you should be using Power Apps. But this is something that Microsoft came up with, and it allows you to actually select some commandlets or existing runbooks and like drag and drop and add them here and add some action to it. I'm not going even to demonstrate this. This is like a demo one that will pull out some information. But this can be actually really tricky to edit because you have some boxes that you are drag and drop here, but those usually need some extra configuration, and then you are getting like in a very complicated way. And instead of that, you can quickly run a PowerShell script or create your own PowerShell script that will do all those things as you want them to do. So we are going to skip. We are going to skip in this demo graphical runbooks, and now it's in edit. So let's actually, I don't need to. I can delete it. There is also something called Runbook workflows. And there is also a possibility to run Python, right? That's also fully supported. Depends what you want to use. Okay, so that's the basics. Once you start uploading your scripts, you will find out that some things maybe will not work as you wish, or you are doing some things on a more complicated way than you actually originally wanted to do, then you actually need to do in here in Automation Account. And by that I mean that if you have a script that you executed from your on-premises server or your own computer, and in them you would have to authenticate to Azure remotely, provide credentials, maybe configure some things, maybe install modules and so on. And if you upload script like that in here, it will probably work. But you will find out soon that it's too complicated, and then you can cut off some things of your script because they're already here integrated and ready for you to use. And a good way to start learning and actually test the storage account is to use something called Rambos Gallery. And this is a gallery of where you can find a lot of scripts that are ready, that are tested, that are downloaded and used by hundreds of thousands of people. And most of the times those scripts in those galleries, is this a graphical? Most of the times they have those parameters that are there for you to set up. So that's great. And if you want to, for example, script to create Azure VM, maybe we can search. Start, stop, maybe I call it create VM. Right. And so there is a script that is last updated in 2018, so that's not good. But we can probably use it to create our virtual machine in Azure. And it will contain like those basic PowerShell commandlets that allows you to create. Right. So that's there. Notice that it's still using Azure RM module. Right. Good. Other good place to start playing with those scripts or finding the script is to go to MS Docs and look at the quick start templates, quick start scripts, and most of the cases you can import those here and they will work for you. And this is all like accessible or prepared so you can maintain your Azure resources. Okay, not inside of the VM, not on your own premises, but most of those scripts only interact with your Azure resources, creating virtual machines, creating storage accounts, backing up, setting backups, deploying new environments, destroying old environments. I use it for that a lot. I have some scripts here that actually create a lab for me. And if you are familiar with the Microsoft VS Lab, Windows Server Labs on GitHub, some of those scripts that actually deploy entire lab for you, they can be executed from here, and you can have instant test lab here for you, or even production environment for you to test. And that's basically the power of PowerShell, not Automation Account itself, but Automation Account is a great place to run those kind of scripts because they allow you to do it quickly. And if you want to work with on-premises environment, and not just on-premises, but with the environment that is running in a different cloud, Microsoft hybrid configuration, or not hybrid configuration, but hybrid infrastructures are tested, they work well. And for this, Microsoft allows you to create something called hybrid worker group. And that takes some time to deploy. You also need a local server. So I'm not going to include that in this demo. But to be able to interact with your on-premises environment, you need to provision something called a hybrid worker. And that is a service that you install and configure in your local environment on your local server. And from there, you connect it back here into Automation Account. And we can use it to help us with those cross-premises authentications and interactions. Basically, you have a friend that is connected to here and it's running on premises, and you can pass through all those information, like, I don't know, turn off the virtual machine that is running on your local Hyper-V cluster. Right, and not just that, with it allows you a little bit more cooperation and authentication to use, for example, local Active Directory service account to do some things inside of the virtual machines on premises. System Hybrid Worker is a little bit different. This service is created for you automatically, and you use it, and it's even written here with your update management. Okay. And next, what I would like to talk about is triggers. And runbooks can be triggered on a schedule, based on an event, or via Webhook. And since we are not going to sit there and run those things individually, configuring triggers is an essential part of using Automation Account. And so first thing that we can use is to create a schedule. And I skipped this, that's where I'm going to come back, but I'm now here in a shared resources. I'm going to come back to that a little bit later. Creating a schedule is easy. We give it a name, we give it a description, we give it a time, and we configure is it going to run once or recurring when it is going to expire. Okay, and that's it. Schedule, as we all know, and as we can all imagine that the schedule can be created. So let's create one. So now we have a schedule, and the schedule as such is actually not going to do anything. It's here and it's for us to use. So to use it, we have to go to our Runbook, click on it, and link it to that schedule. But because it's running on schedule, we cannot rely on it to ask us to enter the parameter every time, because script will not work. Script will start, it will wait for a parameter to be entered, and then it will time out. So we either have to use a script that it doesn't have any schedule or parameters, or we have to provide the parameter here in the text in the schedule link configuration, right? So I'm going to say hello because that's the text. And then we have settings. We can run it on Azure, but if we configure the automation hybrid worker, then we can add that hybrid worker here and run it from here as well. And so this is great. For this purpose, saying hello, it's fine. We can say hello every day. But if you are going to, let's say, create a virtual machine on a schedule, not so useful. But if you create a schedule, and this is very, very useful, to turn off your Azure virtual machine every morning, so you create a runbook that will actually stop the VM, and so you stop paying for the computing part of the VM because the business day is finished and you don't have to run the VM anymore. That's great. So you would typically create one script for starting VM, one script for stopping VM, create two schedules. One will be in the evening to stop it, and one will be in the morning to run it. And so you can have a script that is one for starting and one for stopping. And then that script can expect a parameter, and you create the schedule to turn off the same name. And the parameter here will be obviously the VM name. Okay, so that's very useful. And now the runbook is linked to schedule. And that's it. That's how the scheduling is done. The other way is we can run it based on an event. And I really like that. I really like that. It expects some extra work, but typically on premises, you would expect some event, like you configure monitoring, you have your SCOM serve SCOM, configure monitoring, you monitor if the service is running. And if it's not running, then you can create some action to see, to fix it, for example, or to send an email or something like that. And in here, of course, we can do the same. You can create a watcher, and that's going on from here, watcher task. And so for us to add watcher task, we will have to watch, we will have to create two scripts. One script will be to watch something, and we have to upload the runbook. So we can create a new runbook. I don't know. So what are we going to call it? No. Okay, so watch script 1, and it's going to be a PowerShell, and let's create it. And so let's pretend that this script is watching one of our services in Azure. Yeah. Okay, I'm not going to do that now, but we can pretend. and I didn't want to prepare those because it will take a lot of time to execute everything. And I actually tried it, and the demo will be too long, and we don't have so much time. So so we now have a watch script. Okay, let's publish it. Let's publish a script, and then we will have to create an action script, right? So let's create another Runbook, and the action script will be turn on the VM or restart web server or something like that, right? So you're creating a trigger that is based on an action. So this is action script, PowerShell, create. Okay. And of course, our watch script will have to return some result, and we are not returning any result. And then we go here, we can create an action task. We can call the task watch action 1, frequency. Basically, this is in minutes. If it's something that we have to trigger every minute, then we can create it. We can watch it every minute. If it's something that we want to check once a day, we can change the number of runs here. Right, let's keep it 1. Our watcher script, we are going to create a watcher script. Oh, yeah, so, okay, I will have to change it a little bit, but let's not waste time here. This will, the error I got is actually that is asking me to work with a hybrid worker, but if I did my script properly and return some result, I wouldn't have to do that. There are ways around it, but for what is it now, it will ask me to create a hybrid worker. So, and that's the demo I was doing. So, but to get the point here, watch scripts executed based on an event, easy to configure. You need 2 scripts. One will return the result, and second will perform the action. And then the last thing, or the last trigger that you can use here, is to use a webhook. And for quick explanation what the webhook is, webhook is publicly available, depends on you, URL address, which is unique for your task. And once you open that URL address, the runbook will be executed. And this is great. You can implement, or not implement, but you can use the webhooks in so many different services. You can use it in a normal script to call the action. You can use it in an app. And I tend to use that a lot in like a Power Apps. And I'm now like playing with the flow or something like from Power Apps family. And basically in your flow, you add one of the actions to execute the webhook of your runbook. And how to create that? That's easy. We click on our script, and it's here, add webhook. And so we are creating the new webhook. So we have to give it a name. We can configure when it will expire. So it's not available there forever. You can still enable it or disable it. So I'm configuring it to be enabled till tomorrow. And we have here now the URL address, right? Parameters, obviously you have to add parameter. So I'm going to say hello from webhook, okay? And that's it. It's going to get created. You can see that from your script. And now, if I look at the jobs, we can see that nothing is running. But if I go here, very easy, very simple, you see that URL is something that it's very hard to guess. And I execute it. And okay. I cannot execute it like this in a browser. But if I, okay, let's do that. a different way, because I'm sure everyone wants to see that. I'm trying to save time to do things quickly because I still have a few things to talk about. But if we execute the run script inside of our script, Webhook, the job will start and it will get running here. Okay. And so the last thing that I want to cover here in the automation account is those shared resources. And I explained in the beginning that having to work with Azure Automation is great because it shares a lot of resources with other things in Azure. And so one of those shared things is schedules that we already covered. And once we create a schedule, depending on the access or airbag settings you configure, this can be accessed from different or from the same automation account. And the other thing is modules. And this is a very important thing if you want to start using your Azure PowerShell or any PowerShell inside of the automation account, you need to work with modules. And okay, so here is the set of modules that comes pre-installed, and we can see that there are Azure storage, Azure modules. Most of them are there. Great thing about it is that you can add a module. You can upload your own module that you already created, or you can select modules from library. So if you want to start using the modules that are AZ, not Azure RM, you will type Azure, or maybe just AZ, and you see they are there available for you. Once you click it, once you click import, it's going to import this module, or those modules in this case, for everyone who is using automation account. This is shared. And this is great because it's not there automatically, because we all know that some of those commandlets that are in those modules are like the same, and there can be some conflicts. And you know that if you install AZ over the Azure RM on your local machine, so Microsoft doesn't have you that installed automatically, but you can do it here and install it and overwrite those commandlets with those new ones. That's completely up to you. So those are the modules. One also important thing about modules is to make sure that you update them. And before, this was much easier. You can upload the module or update the modules directly from here. Now you cannot do that. And if you click this link, it will actually open GitHub, from where you can download this script and save this script as a runbook inside of your automation account, and then run it, and it's going to update all those Azure modules to the newest version. It's something that you will typically do once and then execute it on a schedule, or maybe you don't want to mess on a schedule with your modules, so you want to do that manually. Okay, and then just a few more things. One important thing here is credentials, and this is a place where you can create credentials. So I'm going to, for example, VM local user, and give it a name, and create a credential. Okay, and now I have a credential here that it's not easy to read, and it's shared for my scripts to use. And then with one simple Azure commandlet, I can read this credential if my runners account has access rights to it, and get the user. Another way would be to, in modules, to install Azure Key Vault, or let's just say, sorry, not here, here. I can install a Key Vault module if it's not already there. And then I can interact under the same account. I can interact with the Key Vault and get my credentials from there and use them in the script. Okay. Same goes with connections, certificates, variables. We can create the variables that can be here shared for all the groups and so on. And so that's about everything that I wanted to cover in this first introduction hour to the automation account. Let's see if anyone had any questions. For now, I'm going to go back to the presentation. I don't see any questions.
Yeah, we have here 2 questions.
Okay.
So first, we have here one question from Breno saying that he's using Azure DevOps and running .NET commands on the pipelines, and he was trying to understand if it would make sense to use Automation Account to run those same commands and tasks.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I don't think, well, Azure DevOps doesn't Azure Automation Account doesn't come with native support for using the .NET, and you cannot save .NET script there and run it as such. So I think it will be for you in the end more complicated to run those or to use .NET scripts in Azure Automation than it is for you today to use it in a pipeline in Azure DevOps.
Yeah. We have also another question, the last question. So Pagano is saying the VM where it's running Azure Automation jobs, is it in the same tenant or a separate tenant?
Yeah, so that's also a great question. The VM is a container that is, or it's, I think it's a container, but it's probably like entire VM that is there created for you by Microsoft in the background. It's like a service. It's not that it creates VM inside of your subscription that you can see. It's managed service that is running on the background. And there are some things with it. I didn't mention the pricing. You get the 500 minutes of runtime free per month. And this 500 minutes is basically the time it takes to execute your script. Okay, so it's not for running of automation account, but every time when you click run or it scheduled the run of the script, there will be, it takes some time, and this gets calculated off of those 500 minutes. Never, it's also important to say that for another 500 minutes, it costs like $1. Okay, so it's a very cheap service to run. And compare that to the price of the virtual machine. Like here, you can run 1,000 minutes for $1. Try to calculate that with the virtual machine itself.
Nice.
Okay, so I hope that answered. Is there anything else?
No, we don't have any questions. Let me just talk quickly in relation to these slides. So in case you did not have a chance to do it in the beginning of this session, I would like to share with you this opportunity provided by Microsoft to access free relevant materials related to this session. So in order to access these materials, you can scan these QR codes in the slide or even access the aka.ms link and fill in a quick form. It's also important for us to do, for you to do this registration, so it will be official registered to this session, and it's a way to justify the efforts from everyone in relation to this initiative. So it just takes you a minute, and please, it will help us. So, and in meanwhile, I would also like to, before we finish, I want to let you know that next week we will have another great session in this time with Dwayne Natwick, delivering an introduction to Azure Solutions Architects certification. So in case you are studying or planning to take this architect's certification, I want to let you know that Dwayne will deliver this introduction next week, and then he will deliver 5 sessions in July related to this certification, going into detail on the different skills measured in this certification. So please just have a look to the Cloud Lunch and Learn websites and save the dates in your calendars to join us on these sessions and get the architect certification. And I think we are good to close, I would say.
Yep. Thanks, Hugo. And thanks, everyone, for joining in today.
Thank you, Vukasin, for delivering this great session. And thank you, everyone, to join and dedicate your time with us on this session. I hope you enjoyed the session. and I included in the chat a link for our session survey. So we really appreciate your feedback so we can improve our sessions and also deliver future sessions related to the topics that are useful and of your interest. And have a great day, and thank you once again.